Hi all, today we're going to have a closer look at another Mohammed Hijab video. You know, the same guy who brought us this amazing footage.
Basically, in this case, it's a perfect example here, how the mountains have been established and have been pegged onto the earth.
But in this video, he's talking to someone about whether or not Muslims are allowed to kill innocent disbelievers according to their holy texts. Let's jump on in.
I'm saying Muhammad set certain standards.
Yeah.
He murdered innocent people.
He did it.
Yeah?
Okay, so I might be being cynical here, but this looks staged to me. The guy claiming Muhammad killed innocent people seems way too worked up about it. But I might be wrong, and this might be just a legitimate conversation being filmed.
He allowed.
Give me an example of when he murdered innocent people.
I'll just give you. I read it for you. Do you want to read it again for camera?
Innocent people.
They were innocent, yes, absolutely.
Get me your little notepad that you
Absolutely, yeah.
take the notes.
Alright, so I think the emphasis Mr. Hijab puts on the word innocent is telling. He's not denying that his prophet killed people, but is instead implying they weren't innocent. But what exactly does being an innocent mean according to the Quran? Are disbelievers actually innocent? Since I've never been a Muslim, I asked my friend Boogieman to help me out with this part, since he's an ex-Muslim and understands the religion much better than I do.
Muslims love to play with words, like when they say that Muhammad was not a murderer. Yeah, he wasn't, because all the killing he did was legal at his time since he represented the law then. And now saying that Muhammad never killed innocent people. But the manipulation here is that innocent means someone free from moral wrong, and obviously morality in Islam is totally different from ours today. Anyone who insults the Prophet is not innocent, and Muhammad killed many people that insulted him with poetries, like Ka'b ibn Ashraf. The Quran says also that who can be more wicked than one who invents a lie against Allah? It's the biggest crime to lie about God and of course his prophet, and criticizing his prophet is a sort of lie as well. There's a website that explains this better with responding to apologists' excuses, and I hope Godless Cranium will leave it in the description down below. There's also the famous genocide of Banu Qurayza, a tribe of Jews, and the excuses is that he killed them according to their own religion. Like that makes it okay. The cruel thing is that he killed children he thought reached puberty, and how did he decide who reached puberty, you may ask? Well, that's easy, by seeing if they had grown hair. Yup. Now the important question is, why would a prophet sent from an omnipowerful God, a wise God, needs to kill anyone in the first place? Can't he come out with better solutions for his problems? And what difference does it make for us if he killed or if he ordered to kill? We still suffer from his cruel laws until today. Anyways, I hope that was enough, and thank you Godless Cranium for having me.
Thanks a lot for explaining that, Boogieman. Much appreciated. With that out of the way, let's continue with the video.
I told you in the Quran, it says in chapter number 5 verse 32, وَمِنْ أَجْلِ ذَلِكَ كَتَبْنَا عَلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ مَنْ قَتَلَ نَفْسًا بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ أَوْ فَسَادًا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَكَأَنَّهُ قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. Whoever kills one person, lest it be for murder, creating corruption in the land, it's as if he's killed the whole of humanity.
So this verse is often used by Islam apologists. If Mr. Hijab believes that, then all the power to him. However, since he can literally recite the Quran, I find it hard to believe that he isn't aware of the verse that follows the one he used here. Here's the verse he just recited, and here's the very next verse which expands on the first. The punishment of those who wage war against God and his apostle, and strive with might and main for mischief through the land is execution or crucifixion or the cutting off of hands and feet from opposite sides, or exile from the land. That is their disgrace in this world, and a heavy punishment is theirs in the hereafter. As you can see, this changes the meaning drastically. It seems pretty violent to me. I'm aware that some Muslims, maybe even most, will actively choose to rip these verses out of context and justify one or the other, but clearly this is a violent passage, and depending on how you might interpret waging war against God or creating mischief, these verses could easily be used to justify your murder if you're an outspoken critic of Islam or belief in God in general.
In chapter number 60, verse number 8, Surah Al-Mumtahana, it says, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. That God does not disallow you from being nice to those disbelievers. You don't try and kill you, and they don't try and kick you out of your homes, that you'll be nice to them, and that you try and be just with them, because God certainly loves those who are just.
Huh, really? Well, there are plenty of verses that would seem to contradict your statement. For example, I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them. And fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. ISIS also released an article titled "Why We Hate You and Want to Fight You," where they laid out 6 reasons why they despise Westerners. And surprise, surprise, the first reason given was that we are disbelievers. 1. Because you are disbelievers. We hate you, first and foremost, because you are disbelievers. You reject the oneness of Allah, whether you realize it or not. By making partners for him in worship, you blaspheme against him, claiming that he has a son. You fabricate lies against his prophets and messengers, and you indulge in all manner of devilish practices. And the third reason was remarkably similar, but more targeted towards atheists. Some of you are atheist. In the case of the atheist fringe, we hate you and wage war against you because you disbelieve in the existence of your Lord and Creator. I wonder where they draw their inspiration from. In Saudi Arabia, merely being an atheist is an act of terrorism. Last year, a Saudi court sentenced a man to 10 years and 2,000 lashes for atheist tweets. Here, have a watch as the Saudi ambassador defended the law that declares all atheists terrorists.
Human rights situation in Saudi Arabia, for example, there are some would say some bizarre rulings. Why is advocating atheism in Saudi Arabia now considered to be a terrorist event? How do you explain that?
Well, because it is, in Saudi Arabia, we are a unique country. We are the birthplace of Islam. We are the country that hosts the 2 holiest sites for Muslims in Mecca and Medina. We are the country that is based on Islamic principles and so forth. We are a country that is homogeneous in accepting Islam by the entire population. Any calls that challenge Islamic rule or Islamic ideology is considered subversive in Saudi Arabia and would be subversive and could lead to chaos. Well,
somebody who says, I don't believe in God and others shouldn't believe in God is the equivalent of Osama bin Laden?
Well, somebody who says that and calls for it publicly is subversive and could possibly be a terrorist, yes. But
merely by disbelieving in God, he could be a terrorist.
Well, if he was disbelieving in God,
he's not a violent person. If he's exercising his freedom of conscience.
If he was disbelieving in God and keeping that to himself and conducting himself, nobody would do anything or say anything about him. If he is going out in the public and saying, I don't believe in God, that's subversive. He's inviting others
even
to
if that was subversive,
and
a lot of people would not agree with that statement, how is that terrorism? Aren't you just emptying that word of all meaning when you say an atheist is a terrorist?
Well, in terms of subversion, disturbing public peace, disturbing the security of the country, all of that, he is inviting, he is provoking others to react in a way that would also be violent and unacceptable.
Now, obviously, I don't think all Muslims want to kill non-believers, #not all, but I think it can be justified using their holy book, and it often is.
This is ample evidence, muhkamat verses, unambiguous verses, that are directing you, my friend, straight on and answering your question absolutely explicitly. Yet your mind doesn't want to comprehend it. Yet your heart feels like it needs to reject it. Calm down, take the knowledge, and be someone who understands religion.
No one seems to understand it. People interpret it to mean different things, but the problem is it's based on lies. It's based on superstition and nonsense. If I were to say that out loud in places like Saudi Arabia, I could be killed. And that's a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be solved. We need to start honestly looking at what these religions say instead of making excuses for them. I'm going to skip ahead a bit, but as always, I'll leave the link to the original video below.
I'll ask you an open question. Does anyone here extrapolate from the verses that I have just understood, that I've just narrated in the Arabic and in the English, Muslims and non-Muslims? Has anyone understood from those verses that actually that means that you should go and kill innocent people?
Well, no, because you mangled and took one out of context, and the other can be easily refuted using other verses in your holy book. Anyhow, he just repeats himself for the rest of the video, so I'm done with it. I also wanted to share something I found analyzing how the Quran is often used to justify terrorism, because I think it's also important to point out that terrorists often take their own scriptures out of context as well. The declaration from the World Islamic Front for Jihad against the Jews and Crusaders, issued in February 1998, announced the ambition of the group that later became known as Al-Qaeda, to kill the Americans and their allies, civilians and military. The declaration, which is now seen as one of the more important public messages from the Al-Qaeda leadership, began by quoting Surah at 5, urging Muslims to recognize their duty to slay the idolaters wherever they were found. However, the verse, as it was written by bin Laden and his co-signatories, quoted only half the ayah, commanding Muslims to besiege idolaters wherever they could be found as soon as the months wherein fighting was prohibited had passed, Left out was the second part of the ayah. But if they repent and fulfill their devotional obligations and pay the zakat, I probably mangled how that's said, but whatever, then let them go their way, for God is forgiving and kind. The second part softens the blow a little, but I have no intention of repenting or fulfilling devotional obligations to a God I don't believe in, so I hardly see this as a big win, even if it had been included in Al-Qaeda's declaration. The analysis also goes on to explain that the word idolaters, which normally means worshippers of false gods, was used to justify attacking the West because democracy was seen as a new religion. It said, "Democracy is a new religion. In Islam, legislation comes from God. And in democracy, this capacity is given to the people. Therefore, this is a new religion based on making the people into gods and giving them God's rights and attributes. This is tantamount to associating idols with God and falling into unbelief." On that happy note, I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching, take care, and cheers!